Get in here, sit down. We got a lot to do this period. We just spent a couple of weeks in a unit on the disaster movies of the 1970s. Today, let's take a look at the movie that brought the whole disaster genre crashing down. 1980's Airplane. Let's go rogue. Last period we detailed the demise of the disaster genre in the late 1970s. After a huge year in 1974 with The Towering Inferno being the highest grossing movie of the year, Earthquake being the fourth highest grossing movie of the year, Airport 75 being the sixth highest, then the collapse. Forgettable movies like Hindenburg and Airport 77 and Avalanche and The Swarm. But before we get into Airplane, we need to look at a previous parody of the disaster genre, The Big Bus from 1976. The story revolves around a pimped-out, nuclear-powered, double-decker articulated bus needing 32 wheels, making its maiden voyage non-stop from New York to Denver. The lower deck contains a cockpit for the bus's two drivers, a bowling alley, a captain's dining room, a chef's kitchen, and a private marble and gold bathroom. The upper deck has a piano bar at the very front with a 270-degree view and a swimming pool in the back. Sweet ride. An oil tycoon, in cahoots with some Middle Eastern oil sheikhs, wants to destroy the bus so that the fossil-fueled status quo doesn't change. And the big bus has some mishaps along the way to Denver. If you haven't figured it out, this is a spoof of the disaster movies of the 1970s. How? Well, let's count down the ways. Number one, a huge cast of stars. Okay, more like before they were stars, led by the pre-greased Stockard Channing and Joseph Bologna. Number two, the latest, greatest, biggest, baddest something ever seen. A nuclear-powered bus, not unlike the world's tallest building in the Towering Inferno, or Boeing's luxury 747 in Airport 1975, or even after the movie, the even more luxurious 747 of Philip Stevens in Airport 77, or the supersonic Concorde in Airport 79, or shall I go on? Number three, the orange and purple interior, reminiscent of Columbia 409. 4. A musical score done by David Shire, nearly matching the scores of other disaster movies like The Towering Inferno and Airport 1975. 5. The down-on-his-luck hero pressed into action, played by Joseph Bologna. His character has been rejected by the bus driving profession, having crashed a bus in the desert and was suspected of eating 110 passengers. He blamed it on his co-driver, saying he only ate the seats and the floor mats. Number 6. A love interest, in the same vein as Charlton Heston or Karen Black in Airport 1975, or Charlton Heston and Ava Gardner in Earthquake, or Dean Martin and Jacqueline Bisset in the original Airport. You have Kitty Baxter, daughter of the bus's inventor and the main stewardess, on the trip. She has to hunt down her former flame, Dan Torrance, to drive the bus. Number 7, a man of the cloth who doubts his faith, in the vein of Reverend Scott in the Poseidon Adventure. Number 8, couples whose marriage is on the rocks, like every character in Airport, or like the Rogos in the Poseidon Adventure, or like Roger and Patty Simmons in Towering Inferno. In The Big Bus, it's Richard Mulligan and Sally Kellerman, who are waiting for their divorce to finalize. And yet, there are certain things that will set off the romantic feelings between them. Number 9, a somewhat batty older woman, the role that won Helen Hayes an Oscar in the original Airport movie. Number 10, a musical interlude in the vein of Carol Lindley in Poseidon Adventure, or Maureen McCormick in The Towering Inferno, or Helen Reddy in Airport 1975. Murphy Dunn did it so well as the piano man in the piano bar that he was cast in a similar role in 1980's The Blues Brothers. Number 11, the big money shot. The big scene, the big stunt, blowing the water tanks, the capsizing of Poseidon, the explosion of the Hindenburg, the earthquake, and Sensurround. In the big bus, an out-of-control pickup truck gets driven off a cliff and lands in the upper deck of the big bus. in the upper deck piano bar of the big bus. Homage to the small plane crashing into Columbia 409 in Airport 1975. Eventually, the bus goes out of control and ends up teetering on a cliff. Torrance is able to get the bus off by shifting the weight of the bus's carbonated beverage supply to the aft section. The only thing missing was the kid in peril. Well, the big bus, in spite of all the 70s movie disaster cliches and mishaps, did make it to Denver. How's this for coincidence? In the big bus, a news van is parked outside of the reveal of the bus with the call letters WZAZ. Segway. ZAZ is an acronym for the comedy team of Jerry Zucker, Jim Abrahams, and David Zucker. They had nothing to do with the production of the big bus. Total coincidence. They had everything to do with a movie that Paramount Pictures put out in June of 1980. Something called Airplane. Throughout the 1970s, the Zucker brothers and Abrahams were a sketch comedy team. They would get their material from recording commercials on late night TV, the stuff after Johnny Carson. One night they recorded the 1957 movie 0 Hour about a flight that loses its crew to food poisoning, and one of the passengers has to land the plane. The movie 0 Hour was based on a teleplay written by Arthur Haley, who went on to write the novel Airport. And now we've come full circle. They thought that it was great fodder for a comedy movie, and they wrote a script that became Airplane. In many scenes in Airplane, the dialogue is directly out of 0 Hour, verbatim, right down to Joey visiting the cockpit and the captain giving him a toy airplane. And although lawyers assured them that their script was well within the bounds of parody, ZAZ, Zucker, Abrahams, and Zucker, bought the rights to 0 Hour for $2,500. Obviously, ZAZ added additional dialogue. Humor, sometimes crass, more often absurd or surreal, punctuated this story from 0 Hour. Captain Over asked Joey if he's ever seen a grown man naked. That was not in the 1957 movie. In one of the best scenes, and one that probably couldn't be done today, a flight attendant can't understand what two African-American men are asking for until an elderly white woman shows up, Barbara Billingsley, and announces, "I speak jive." Barbara Billingsley was June Cleaver, matriarch of the typical middle-class white family in the 1950s TV series Leave It to Beaver. Well, how about the rest of the cast? Well, Ted Stryker, the hero, is played by Robert Hayes, who'd just come off a TV series called Angie. Elaine Dickinson is played by Julie Haggerty, no relation, in her first movie role. She had played on Broadway. Dr. Rumack is played by Leslie Nielsen. Up to this point, he was a serious actor who had played in The Forbidden Planet and was the captain in the Poseidon Adventure. The airplane's captain, Clarence Over, is played by Peter Graves, who's best known for playing in the TV series Mission Impossible. He also played a number of other serious roles, including roles in Starlog 17 and the TV miniseries The Winds of War. Airport dispatcher Steve McCroskey is played by Lloyd Bridges, who played in the TV drama San Francisco International Airport. Captain Rex Kramer is played by Robert Stack, best known for playing Prohibition agent Elliot Ness in the TV series The Untouchables, winning a 1960 Primetime Emmy Award. During World War II, he served as a U.S. Navy aerial gunnery officer. This may have led him to being cast in multiple roles as a pilot, like in Eagle Squadron from 1942, Fighter Squadron from 1948, Sabre Jet in 1952, Murder on Flight 502 in 1974, and opposite John Wayne in The High and the Mighty in 1954, playing a commercial pilot who cracks up after his airplane encounters engine failure. 7'2", LA's Lakers center Kareem Abdul-Jabbar plays co-pilot Roger Murdoch. In the original 0 Hour, the co-pilot was played by Elroy Crazy Legs Hirsch of the LA Rams. The only person missing from the cast was George Kennedy as Joe Petroni. ZAZ tried, though. Kennedy turned down the role of flight dispatcher Steve McCroskey, believing that the movie would damage the Airport franchise, as if Airport 79 hadn't already done it. He may have regretted his decision, though. He was cast in the next ZAZ film series, The Naked Gun, opposite Leslie Nielsen's Detective Frank Drebin. Each of the actors cast in the movie are playing against type, like June Cleaver, speaking jive. It's one thing to laugh at the crass and the absurd humor of the movie. It's a whole different show when it's seen as a parody of the 10 years of the airport movies before it. So how does Airplane stack up as a spoof of the disaster movies of the 1970s? Well, huge cast, check. A down-on-his-luck hero pressed into action. Ted Stryker was a flight commander in The War that lost 7 of his squadron in an attack. He suffers from a fear of flying and a drinking problem. But when all of the crew go down, he's the only person on the plane that has any flying experience. A love interest, in the vein of Charlton Heston and Karen Black, or Charlton Heston and Ava Gardner, or Dean Martin and Jacqueline Bisset, or Stockard Channing and Joseph Bologna. In Airplane, Ted Stryker follows former girlfriend Elaine Dickinson to a flight that she is flight attending. He spends much of the movie trying to get her attention and telling people about their former relationship. The musical interlude. Helen Reddy turned down the opportunity to reprise her role from Airport 1975, so Zucker, Abrahams, and Zucker got Maureen McCormick to play a singing nun. She'd previously left her mark on the disaster genre, recording A Morning After, the Academy Award-winning song from the Poseidon Adventure, and another Academy Award-winning song, We May Never Love Like This Again, used in The Towering Inferno. Well, after all the hijinks in the sky, Stryker lands the plane, and they all live happily ever after. Roll credits. Made on a budget of $3.5 million, Airplane made $159 million, the fourth highest grossing film of 1980. But its impact went far beyond the year. The movie's a staple on a number of lists of funniest movies of all time. The Writers Guild of America ranked it the 4th funniest screenplay of all time. Total Film voted it the 2nd greatest comedy ever, as did Britain's Channel 4. Airplane was number 10 on the American Film Institute's list of 100 Years, 100 Laughs. The film also made AFI's list of great movie quotes with the exchange between Ted Stryker and Dr. Rumack. Surely you can't be serious. I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. So what was the impact of Airplane? This movie was the death knell of the disaster genre. It would be 16 years before another disaster movie would finish in a year's top 10 grossing films. That would be Twister in 1996. The following year, James Cameron's Titanic finished the year making $1.8 billion. That's with a B. The success of these two movies would kick off a new interest in disaster movies that peppered the late 1990s and the early 2000s. But this is about the 1970s. What accounts for the popularity of Airplane and the meh of The Big Bus? The Big Bus was a fun parody, but probably ahead of its time. The disaster genre was not dead yet. Joe Petroni had 2 more incarnations to go. People were still headed to the theaters in 1976, 77, and 78 to get their fill of disaster. When Universal fumbled the ball with Concord 1979, Zucker, Abrahams, and Zucker were there for the kill shot. Airplane, killing the disaster genre with uproarious laughter. Bring on the 80s. Hey, thanks for coming by. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something. If I did it right, you did both. Leave a comment. Did you see Airplane when it came out in the theaters? Did you see The Big Bus? I had fun. Bro, quit my day job. And next time you're on a flight and the entire flight crew gets food poisoning and they're incapacitated, and you're the only one that knows how to land a plane, remember me. I'm Mark Haggard. I'm a history teacher, and I've gone rogue.